What if I told you that everything you think you know about money is, well, maybe not wrong, but incomplete? What if it's not some pile of gold you have to hoard, but something way more dynamic? Today, we're going to explore a really simple analogy that could totally reshape how you see your finances. Let's dive in.
This right here, this is the core idea for everything we're about to talk about. I want you to try and forget that image of money as this static pile of gold. Instead, just for a few minutes, think of it as water. It's fluid, it's constantly moving, and it's all part of this huge interconnected system. So here's the journey we're going to take. First, we'll really nail down this money is water idea. Then we'll zoom out and look at the entire financial ecosystem. We'll talk about how to protect your system with, you guessed it, rain, then how to manage your own personal flow. We'll also figure out the difference between the river of equity and the lake of debt. And finally, we'll see how it all loops back around in one big cycle. All right, section one, let's start by just tearing down the old way of thinking. We often picture our money as this fixed pile of cash that we have to protect and guard. But honestly, in today's world, that's kind of like trying to hold water in your hands. It just doesn't work that way. So let's do a little thought experiment. Imagine you have 1 crore rupees just sitting there in cash. And every single day you spend 1,000 rupees. How long does it last? Well, the math works out to about 27 years. Now, that might sound like a pretty long time, right? But the key is you are just draining a resource. It's a finite pool. This is that old way of thinking. Money is just a pile that only ever gets smaller. And honestly, that's a pretty stressful and limited way to look at things. And this is exactly where we need to shift our whole perspective. The goal isn't to guard a pile of cash. The goal is to build a sustainable water system, just like in your own home. Imagine you're connected to this constantly flowing river, right? You've got pipes bringing wealth in, you've got tanks to store it, and you've got different taps for all your expenses. Now that is a much more powerful and way more accurate model for how finance really works. Okay, so now that we've got that household plumbing model in our heads, let's zoom out and apply this whole analogy to the entire financial world. I mean, if our personal finances are the plumbing, then what are the rivers, the lakes, and the oceans of finance? So on the grandest scale possible, you've got the ocean. And this, my friends, is the entire stock market. We're talking stocks, bonds, derivatives, all of it. It's this massive, interconnected body of financial value where all wealth comes from, and eventually where it all returns. And flowing out of that ocean, that's the river. And the river is equity. It's the fresh, flowing water that really drives growth and creates new wealth. Think of it as the main source we all want to tap into. And how much water you can actually get from it? Well, that all depends on the kind of financial plumbing you've built for yourself. Now, let's talk about debt. It doesn't have to be this big, scary word. In our water world, debt is like a lake, or maybe even the water table, deep underground. It's a stable, predictable, and accessible reservoir of capital. Sure, it's not flowing and growing like the river of equity, but it is a super dependable source you can draw from when you need it. So we've got our ecosystem, right? We have oceans, rivers, and lakes. But what happens when there's a drought? How do we protect our system and make sure our resources get replenished? Well, this brings us to the whole idea of insurance. Yep, in our financial world, insurance is the rain. It's the natural process that fills everything back up, especially when things go wrong. A good, healthy rainfall can literally stop your entire financial world from drying up. But there's a problem. In our modern world, that rain doesn't always reach the ground. It's like we've poured this huge layer of concrete all over our financial landscape. And this concrete, it blocks the rain, the insurance payout, from ever seeping into the ground and filling up our reserves. This concrete stands for all the inefficiencies and roadblocks that stop insurance from actually doing its job. So, what is this concrete actually made of? Well, you know what I'm talking about. It's the middlemen who take their cut. It's the bureaucratic red tape and inefficiencies. It's these complicated products that don't really fit what we need. All this stuff just soaks up the rain, leaving very, very little usable water for the person who actually needs it most. So, what's the answer? The solution is to build your own personal rainwater harvesting system. What does that mean? It means creating a direct pipeline from the sky straight to your storage tanks. In real financial terms, we're talking about finding insurance that gives you direct coverage and lets you bypass all that concrete of middlemen and bureaucracy. Think of a simple term life policy or a really well-stocked emergency fund that you and only you control. Okay, so we've looked at the big picture. Now let's bring this whole analogy right back to our own personal finances. How can we actually use this framework to manage our money, from the river all the way to our tap?
You can really break it down into 4 simple steps. Step 1, you collect water from the river of your equity investments. Step 2, you store that water in your tanks, which are your different bank accounts. Step 3, you open up the taps and distribute that water for your spending. And then there's step 4, which is the really cool part, automation. Tools like a systematic transfer plan or an STP, they're basically your automated plumbing. An STP can just automatically move a set amount of money from, say, a mutual fund into your checking account every single month. It's like having a smart system that makes sure your household tank is always full, no effort required.
Now, with this whole framework in mind, we can start to look at all those different financial products out there in a completely new light. We can ask a really simple question for each one. Is this thing part of the flowing river of equity, or is it part of the stable lake of debt?
Let's just put them side by side. The river of equity, that's all about flow, growth, and potential, which of course comes with higher risk. The lake of debt, on the other hand, is all about stability, reserves, and security. And just understanding that basic distinction is absolutely key to building a balanced financial system for yourself. So this is where it gets really interesting. This framework helps us recategorize things we thought we knew. A credit card, that's just water on demand from the lake of debt. Pretty simple. But what about land? A lot of people see it as this super stable, safe thing. But in this model, it's actually a section of the river. Its value flows up and down with the market, making it an equity investment. And gold? It's kind of a hybrid, like a precious stream, with bits of both stability and growth. Even charity fits in here. You can think of it as positive rain, something that contributes to the health of the whole ecosystem.
All right, let's get to the grand finale. It's time to connect all the dots, because this whole thing isn't just a one-way street from the source to your tap. Nope, it's a complete continuous cycle. This is such a key insight. When you spend money, it doesn't just vanish. The water that leaves your tap goes right back into the system. It's just like evaporation. Your spending flows back into that big financial ocean. It becomes part of the clouds of the economy. And then eventually it comes back down as rain in the form of someone else's income. And the whole cycle just starts all over again. So this brings us to our final thought. Armed with this new way of seeing things, it's time to take a look at your own finances. Seriously, ask yourself, are you connected to a flowing river of equity? Are your storage tanks set up in a smart way? Is your plumbing automated to be super efficient? And do you have a personal rainwater harvesting system ready for a dry spell? Just take a moment and really consider it. What does your financial water system truly look like?